This guide covers all the actions Lancer and Dragoon learns from level 1 to 50 in order. We go over how each action is meant to be used and recommend ways to use it when relevant. In the summary, we will cover a detailed attack rotation for use at level 50 that encompasses all of the things you learn throughout this guide. Now then, True Thrust is your starting weapon skill. It is the first step in a 3-step combo, more commonly called a 1-2-3 combo, so at this point you simply use this repeatedly. At level 4, you learn the weapon skill Vorpal Thrust. This is your first option as a step 2 in your 1-2-3 combos. At this point, you simply alternate between True Thrust and Vorpal Thrust. At level 6, you learn the ability Life Surge. This ability makes your next weapon skill do a critical hit guaranteed. It also makes you heal for some of the damage. Keep in mind that if the weapon skill does additional damage over time, this will not be affected by Life Surge. Take note that while weapon skills incur a 2.5 second recast timer where you can't cast another weapon skill, abilities are unaffected by this recast timer, and so can be cast between them. However, using any action incurs at least about half a second of animation locking where you can cast nothing at all. If you want to learn more about these concepts, I have 2 shorts on the concepts of global cooldowns and weaving respectively that I highly recommend. Life Surge is best used between weapon skills. Using abilities between weapon skills is called weaving. At this level, you want to use Life Surge on Vorpal Thrust, since it is your hardest hitting weapon skill. At level 8, you learn the role action and ability Second Wind, which heals you for a significant amount. When in a group, it is recommended to only use Second Wind if you are the only one that needs significant healing, as otherwise, the healer will probably cast a party-wide heal anyway. At level 10, you learn the role action and ability Leg Sweep, which stuns your target and can stop enemies with telegraphed attacks with cast times. As a stun, it can also be used to help give your tank a bit of breathing room by stopping at least one enemy in its tracks for a bit. At level 12, you learn the role action and ability Bloodbath, which adds a life-stealing effect to your attacks. If you are actively taking damage or need a lot of healing over a longer period of time, then Bloodbath is likely stronger than Second Wind, and using both may sometimes be excessive and cause you to lack options later. At level 15, you learn the weapon skill Piercing Talon, which has a range of 20 yalms. Keep in mind that the base run speed is 6 yalms, meaning in the recast time of Piercing Talon, you can run 15 yalms, significantly more if you sprint. As such, it is not always worth casting Piercing Talon as you close in on enemies. However, if you are forced away from your target for a bit, you can cast Piercing Talon to keep up some damage output. Piercing Talon does not cancel your combos. At level 18, you learn the weapon skill Disembowel, which is your second option for the second step of your 1-2-3 combos. While it does less damage than Vorpal Thrust, it applies a damage buff to you for a while, and so you should use True Thrust, Disembowel first, and then use Vorpal Thrust instead of Disembowel only if the buff is running. Try to reapply the buff as close to it running out as possible. At level 22, you learn the role action and ability Feint, which causes your target to do less damage for a bit, with physical damage being reduced twice as much. The best time to use Feint is when you're expecting a large amount of damage from an enemy, especially if you know it will be physical. Good examples include when a boss is casting a party-wide attack, or a large hit on the tank. At level 26, you learn the weapon skill Full Thrust, which is your strongest attack by far, and the combo finisher for the combo involving Vorpal Thrust. From now on, you want to use Life Surge on Full Thrust. Keep in mind that this sometimes means Life Surge will sit ready for several seconds as you prepare to use Full Thrust, which is okay. At level 30, you learn the ability Lance Charge, which boosts your damage for a while on a 1-minute cooldown. When starting a fight, you should use Lance Charge immediately after Disembowel, and in the middle of a fight, simply use Lance Charge when it is ready. If you have a significant amount of skill speed, such that the recast timer on your weapon skills is 2.45 or less, you may be able to fit a 9th extra weapon skill in the duration of Lance Charge if you perform a so-called Late Weave, which involves casting Lance Charge as late in the weapon skill cooldown as possible without delaying the weapon skill itself. However, should your weapon skill recast time be higher than that, then Late Weaving will not help you very much. While using Life Surge during Lance Charge will maximize the value of it, you should not make a point of delaying Life Surge to use during Lance Charge, as this causes you to lose out on far more damage due to Life Surges you didn't get to use. You should continue to use Life Surge on Full Thrust whenever it comes up and Life Surge is available. Also at level 30, doing your class questline will eventually lead you to the Dragoon quest, which is available once you complete the main scenario quest, Self-Management. Once you unlock the Dragoon, remember to equip your soul crystal to change into the Dragoon job. The starting action of the Dragoon is the ability Jump, which simply does some damage to your target and momentarily moves you to its position. Be aware that in the fraction of a second that you land on the enemy, you can be hit by attacks targeting that location. Additionally, take note that the animation lock on Jump is noticeably longer than on other abilities, so it may be healthy to consider weaving it alone between two weapon skills, or at least not alongside another Jump style ability. In the start of a fight, you should weave Jump after Lance Charge, and then, whenever it is available. If done correctly, then Jump will naturally fall into the duration of Lance Charge consistently. However, should something happen to delay either one to cause them to drift apart, it is typically better to use Jump whenever it is available, compared to delaying it for a significant amount of time. Take note that you should not stop to use Jump if your weapon skill is ready to use, which does indeed lead to the optimal approach being running up to the target, swinging at them, and then jumping. At level 32, you learn the role action and ability Arm's Length, which makes you immune to most knockbacks, and also has the additional effect that if an enemy swings at you, it reduces their attack speed for a while. This is a very strong defensive tool if you need it, so consider using this ability when you are targeted by enemies, especially if the tank dies, for instance. At level 35, you learn the ability Elusive Jump, which causes you to backflip 15 yalms very quickly. Take note that this cannot be used to jump over walls or gaps in the floor. If you angle your character correctly, you can use it to move in any direction you wish, for instance to more quickly reach the boss. You can also use it to dodge boss mechanics, but just keep in mind you need to touch the ground before your location actually changes, otherwise the attack will still hit you. At level 40, you learn the weapon skill Doomspike. With 3 or more targets, you should use this attack instead of all other weapon skills, with the one exception that if the fight will last at least 30 seconds, and there are only 3 targets, no more and no less than using True Thrust and Disembowel for the damage buff is worth it. In area of effect fights like this, or AoE for short, using Life Surge on Doomspike is also better than using it on Full Thrust. At level 45, you learn the ability Spine Shatter Dive, which on a minute cooldown does some damage and also moves you to your target's location. Like Jump, Spine Shatter Dive also takes noticeably longer to resolve. Spine Shatter Dive can be used as a gap closing option, however, as it perfectly lines up with Lance Charge and does decent damage, in most situations it is recommended to use it after Lance Charge. If you know you will need the mobility to save time running with your weapon skill ready, then it is worth saving Spine Shatter Dive for this, as the damage gained from pairing it with Lance Charge is not that large. At level 50, you learn the weapon skill Chaos Thrust, which is the combo finisher for the Disembowel combo, doing a decent amount of damage and applying a damage over time component, or DOT for short, to the target. The full damage of Chaos Thrust is much greater than that of Full Thrust, but keep in mind that Life Surge only boosts the upfront damage, so you should still use Life Surge on Full Thrust. Additionally, Chaos Thrust does slightly more damage when you use it from behind an enemy, indicated by the open part of the targeting reticle. If there is no open part, then you can hit it from anywhere and it still works as intended. When playing alone, don't worry about this, but in a group, try to always use it from behind the target. As a final note, on 3 or 4 targets, if the fight lasts at least 24 seconds, it is worth using a Chaos Thrust combo specifically for the purpose of getting the Disembowel buff. But also following up with Chaos Thrust is still worth it. On 5 or more targets, it is still not worth getting the buff up, and you should skip directly to Doomspike. You also learn the ability Dragonfire Dive, which, just like Spine Shatter Dive, moves you to your target and also takes noticeably longer to resolve. Dragonfire Dive does a lot of AoE damage and should generally be paired up with every second Lance Charge due to Dragonfire Dive's 2-minute cooldown. You should not save Dragonfire Dive for mobility reasons. You also learn the role action and ability True North, which makes all attacks with some sort of positional bonus like Chaos Thrust automatically succeed. As you have just the one attack with such a requirement, it is not that impactful, but it is worth learning to use this action since you may benefit a lot more from it at a higher level. Now, to round off, let's cover an actual boss fight opener and rotation. You can use Elusive Jump to backflip towards the boss, or you can simply sprint up to them depending on preference. Start with True Thrust, followed by Disembowel and then weave Lance Charge. Depending on skill speed, you may prefer to late weave it. Then use Chaos Thrust and weave Jump. Then use True Thrust, weaving Dragonfire Dive, and then Vorpal Thrust, weaving Life Surge and Spine Shatter Dive, and finish with Full Thrust. If you find it difficult to properly weave Spine Shatter Dive here, you can use it after Full Thrust too. After that, your general rotation is to use pretty much all of your cooldowns when they become ready, except Life Surge, which should be paired with the next Full Thrust when possible. For your weapon skills, you alternate between 3 sets of the Full Thrust combo and 1 set of the Chaos Thrust combo to reapply the Disembowel buff. If there are 2 targets and they both will live at least 12 seconds, using 2 sets of Chaos Thrust and 2 sets of Full Thrust is beneficial. For AoE, on 3 or 4 targets, you can use the Chaos Thrust combo to keep up the buff from Disembowel and then use Doomspikes repeatedly. On 5 or more targets, this is not worth it and you should simply spam Doomspike. Use Life Surge on Doomspike and continue to use all of your cooldowns as previously mentioned. Now, that is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support me and my channel, you can like the video, leave a comment, subscribe and hit the bell to get notified when next I post a video. If you want to give even more support than that, you can also become a member of the channel. Fun fact, before Shadowbringers, Spine Shatter Dive had a stun component to it, which no one used it for given that it also did damage. More importantly, Spine Shatter Dive also granted the Dive Ready buff, which made a crucially important impact on your damage at level 70.